You would send them down this chute. The chute would get narrower and narrow, and then as they eventually got to a place where only one animal could pass through, there the shepherd's rod would be, and as the animals walked through, you would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, the 10th animal through goes to the Lord. Didn't matter what the scriptures say. Didn't matter whether it was good or bad. In this situation, God got whatever came through at that time. All right, you just let them go, and whoever got there, got there. Now, how much did a person tithe? We're talking about animals now. If the person had 9 animals, how much went to the Lord? 0. All right. How much did a person tithe? We're talking about animals. If they had 15 animals, well, that'd be 1.5, 1.5 animals, Brother Green. No, that would be 1 animal. All right. We need to understand the scriptures means what it says. It's very simple, okay? The 10th animal under the rod. So if you had 19 animals, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 10th animal goes to the Lord. Start counting again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No more animals. That's it. Out of 19 animals, the Lord got 1. If you had had 1 more, that 1 more would have went to the Lord. That's for sure. All right, so for those who raised animals part-time, maybe they never had maybe they never had 10 or more animals. Then they would never tithe from those animals. Okay, the scripture means what it says. All right. So and you know, I've heard tell that the Lord is always supposed to get the best. Well, sometimes. Not in this situation. What did we just read? Right? Whatever animal got there, that's the animal that the Lord got. Okay? Whether it was good or whether it was bad. Okay? Now, let's take a look at the chart here having to do with the Levitical tithe once again. If you're taking out another blank one, I hope. And this one is just concerning the animals. Why did they tithe? And hopefully you have written in there the scripture, Leviticus chapter 27, 32 through 34. Who gave the tithe? It would be shepherds or those who raised animals. What did they tithe? It was animals that they raised, not wild animals, not wild game. Okay? No, just animals that they raised. When did they tithe? All right, on my sheet I put in a question mark. It's not clear to me exactly when they did this tithe of the animals. We know it wasn't every week, it wasn't every month, right? Was it just at harvest time? How many harvests were there in a year? I don't know, okay? Or was it every 6 months? It's not clear to me. So for me, I left it as a question mark. It seems the reason they would do it at harvest time, but I didn't locate scripture where I would feel comfortable saying that that's exactly what it means. I wasn't comfortable saying that, so I didn't write it down. Like I say, on mine, I put in question marks. Okay, where did they place it? It was in their towns. See, Levites were all over. Okay, they weren't just at Jerusalem. All right, there were Levites in the local towns. Those are the Levites that you were supposed to take care of. All right. This tithe that I'm talking about, the Levitical tithe, went to the Levites. And how did they tithe? Every 10th animal. All right. And who did they give it to? That's covered in the same note you should have earlier, Numbers chapter 18, starting in verse 21. Okay. I'm going to take a minute just to talk about the number 7 for just a moment. The number 7 was significant for several reasons. There was you just learned, some of you, that there was a 7-year cycle of the Levitical tithe, that you only tithe 6 out of the 7 years. Also, let me read another one to you. Exodus chapter 21, verse 1. These are the laws you are to set before them. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years. But in the 7th year he shall go free without paying anything. The 7th year was the Sabbath year. If you look on the other chart I gave you, the Israelite 7-year cycle, you'll see that the 7th year of the 50-year cycle was the Sabbath year. Different things would happen there, and I just mentioned one of them. A slave would go free. A Hebrew slave would go free. So that's a whole nother study to talk about more things having to do with the significance of 6 days of work, seventh day rest, sort of thing. Okay. Let me also mention a little bit about the Jubilee. Okay, and the Jubilee, wow, it would never work in this society. Okay, it wasn't intended to. In the year of Jubilee, if you lost your land or sold your land at some period before then in the year of Jubilee, you would get your land back. Yes, you would get your land back. We're not used to that. We don't understand that. Don't worry about it. We don't need to understand it. Okay, this was intended for the Israelite community. Okay, that's what those laws were for. Let me go to the question that I asked. How much did a carpenter have to tithe if he earned 100 mites a week? I confess that's kind of a trick question, because carpenters were not required to tithe. Okay, if you didn't farm the land, or if you didn't raise animals and have over 10 animals or more, if you didn't have 10 animals or more, right, you didn't tithe, right? So you might think, oh, by the way, you also didn't get paid in mites and then hurry up and buy some food and take food to the church or food to the synagogue. No, no. It was those who owned the land, okay, who farmed the land. So it would come to mind, you might think that, well, Brother Green, that doesn't sound fair. Well, it might not sound fair, right? But we need to understand that God's idea of equality is altogether different than ours, right? That's a whole other subject. I would have to do another series, another short series on God's equality, right? But here, I'll mention this. This will help you. If you have 4 children in your family, and one's 2, and one's 7, and one's 12, and one's 19, we'll say, years old, and you want to give them an allowance, okay? Now, you could be strictly fair and say, okay, I want to be fair. I'm going to give all you children the same amount, okay? The 2-year-old, you give them $5, all the way to the 19-year-old, you each give them $5, right? On one hand, you might say, well, that's fair. They all got an equal amount. But God is saying, no, that's not fair. And as a good parent, you realize, think about it, you already realize that giving your 2-year-old $5 and giving your 19-year-old $5, that's not the same thing. Okay? Your 2-year-old is too young to do anything with it, and your 19-year-old is too old to do anything with it. All right? Just $5. Okay? No, God's equality is so you have a glimpse of God's equality. You know in your heart that that's not the way to do it. So that's why you, if you're going to give allowance, you change it as they get older. All right. So I want us to set aside that notion of what we think might be fair. All right, or what we think might be fair. We need to understand, what did God's law say. All right, and we don't need to understand it a whole lot because we're not under those laws. At another time, and throughout this session, I will mention the word principle. We need to understand God's principle on different things. All right, I give you some examples in this series, and as we go along in other lessons, I will continue to mention that. That's for sure. So I'm going to stop here. I think I've covered all that I'm going to cover right now. I thank you for joining me. Hopefully you'll join me again next time. Thank you.